When I take these engines apart, I try to do it in somewhat systems. So like easily take off the air inlet system, then we'll take off the cooling system, and then work towards getting the wiring system out, the vacuum system out, then the intake manifold off. Once we get the intake manifold off and all that other stuff, then we'll be pretty close to going back underneath there and disconnecting the engine from the trans. So we'll start with the intake. Now I'm going to see if I can get the coolant system out. Start with the expansion tank. I like to leave the nuts for these in their spots as well. On the bottom side of this expansion tank, there's another, usually a clamp that was similar to the top one. This one has a regular hose clamp on there, and there's also a connection for the low coolant. Now we're going to do the upper radiator hose. One thing we should have done when we were down underneath was do the lower radiator hose. Back underneath the car, the lower radiator hose over here, so I'm going to disconnect it from right here. There's probably still going to be a lot of coolant in there, so I closed off the petcock over here and got my drain bucket right underneath there because there's going to be quite a bit probably come out of there. And with this being an automatic car, we're going to have to disconnect the transmission fluid lines as well. And I'll do the lower trans line. Okay, with that disconnected, we should be able to go back up top, pull the radiator and the fan out. And there's an upper transmission fluid line as well, so disconnect that, then the radiator stays, and the radiator with the fan should come right out. I'm going to do this transmission line first. And I leave the bolts in here. Before we can take the radiator out, we got to disconnect the fan control. And this one's kind of usually breaks, but there's a little hook right here, and you pry back on it and then pull the whole thing out. But I was looking at this ABS. ABS is holding the radiator and the fan in there pretty tight, so hopefully it won't be an issue getting it out. See if I can just raise it up out of here. So now the cooling system's pretty much out. I mean, we still got the lower radiator hose on there, but that can come out with the engine when it comes out, or we can take it off before. Now I'm just gonna start taking some of these miscellaneous hoses off. Basically just work around doing both sides, just disconnecting electrical connections and vacuum lines. There's our vacuum line. One thing I'm going to do while I'm thinking about it is hit this EGR with some PB Blaster. Those can be kind of hard to get off of there as well. For the fuel system, they got these little kits. This is probably like a $5 or $10 kit from the parts store, but it comes with all these different sizes. They work for AC lines and fuel lines, and I love this kit. I've used the other kit or other tools that you can do but nothing ever really works as well for me as this kit. And the way it works, you just take it, it's got an open end, and then it's got like a raised portion, and that raised portion is going to go towards the springs. Stick it on, slide it in. Easy as that. For the throttle linkage, of course this spring is going to have to get disconnected, but the way that you disconnect the cruise controls, it just kind of pops up and off of there. And then the actual throttle cable, you can pull it in and around, and this little portion right here, this little nub is what comes out of it. There you can see it's sticking halfway out. There, now it's all the way out. And now with the spring off, we'll take that bracket off and get the throttle linkage out of the way. The spring's pretty easy. And then you got two 10 mils. Again, leave the bolts in there. While we're back here, we can get the heater core connections going, get those disconnected. So there's two of them. We'll disconnect them here. These are being a little stubborn, so I'm going to put some PV Blaster on there. Now we can get our coil packs out. While we let the PB Blaster soak on the heater core lines, we can take the alternator out. Get the bracket off. I'm going to put those screws back in there. Take the lead off. I'm going to wait to pull this other one off until I get the alternator out, because I always break them. Looks like we might have found our coolant leak down in the valley. There's a bunch of coolant down there. Could have been coming from right behind the water pump here, that hose that comes off of there. Or it could be the intake manifold gasket that's leaking down in there. This intake manifold has been replaced because this isn't the factory one. This looks like some type of aftermarket replacement, dormant or something. Okay, I got all the intake bolts out. Of note, there's two up here. They're a little bit longer. These ones actually have a little spacer in there too. So there's two there, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 over on this side, and then there's 5 on that side, including one on the way back. This one doesn't want to come all the way out for some reason. So now with all the bolts loose, the intake should be loose. So this bracket right here is attached to the back of the head. That's not letting it go out. So I can't get this tube off of the heater core, so I'm going to try and take it off of the intake. Lots of coolant down in the valley.